So the topic that you mentioned, bow changes, it's a very interesting subject, and that subject was of interest to so many musicians, concert musicians, and obviously teachers who were trying to explain that to their students how and what to do when you connect uh, two strings or when you're changing the bow direction. So I grew up with the different theories, and different teachers have approached that differently. There were two schools of thoughts. One school was obviously the old Russian school, and that old Russian school, you can see that with Heifetz and other uh, famous violinists of the past, including actually young Oistrakh. There is a very interesting picture of young Oistrakh standing like this, that's more correct, with his elbow pinned to his body, wrist being like so, which is in the relaxed position, and all the fingers like that on the bow. Where if you think about that anatomically makes sense, because when you progress with the movement of the hand down, obviously only three fingers are touching the bow, and anatomically pinky won't be able to touch the bow. So if you think about that, that's the way how you could see young Oistrakh at age, I don't know, 10 or even younger, and that was the picture like this. So I don't know if that was exactly what Stolarsky was teaching Oistrakh, or that was Oistrakh himself at that age, tender age of 10 or something like that. Decided to do when the picture was taken, it's hard to say, but apparently this was definitely Stolarsky, or maybe before Stolarsky, because Stolarsky, I don't remember anyone else playing like that in Stolarsky class. So that was more like that. But the wrist, position of the wrist was still like so, which is normal. And anatomically, it's almost impossible to do it like this, that you can see in the later school that was more present in the 60s, 70s, and those were students of Yankelevich and other younger teachers at Moscow Conservatory, Tsiganov, and other people. But if you look at the right hand of our students, Flesch and his students, you can see somewhere the position of hand to be somewhere in between extreme Heifetz and extreme 60, 70 of the Moscow Conservatory at that time, and even more of this. So I grew up with constant discussion what to do. So as you may know, Germans were developed the finger stroke, and the finger stroke, Fingerstrich. Finger stroke is when you're moving the hand, your fingers gather at the closer to the frog, making this move, and when you're coming to the almost coming to the frog position, the hands start moving and the finger follow. So this movement going up and down. That was developing and discovery of German violin school. German violin school is the second one. The first one was Franco-Belgian, and they, Massar and other teachers at the French Paris school, so Franco-Belgian, they were talking about you come, and as you come, you go back. So there is not a movement in your fingers. Germans discovered the finger movement, finger stroke, Fingerstrich. And French were saying that if you are moving that really slow, slowing down, and you go as you come. You're moving, slowing down, and go back. So the Russian interpreted that, the idea of Russian interpretation was figure 8. So I was hearing that you need to make a figure 8 in your head, and that's figure because that's eternity. So you're doing this with very little of the fingers. Because in those proponents of that, when you do rapid change of finger, you can really hear that movement. So calmness of the fingers and movements, you see, I do that, but it's almost impossible to see. So in that sense, if you do that well, the fingerstrich works. But other proponents who are saying that you are not moving are also including that slowing down to the point where it's almost stopping and you're going to the other direction. So needless to say that I was completely confused as a kid for two reasons. First of all, every teacher that would subscribe to this idea or that idea would say that this is right or this is right. And in the eye of 10-year, 12, 13, 14-year-old student, when you have two options, you're completely confused. And I was confused as well. And later I came to Moscow, and there were two violinists, actually three violinists, that influenced me a lot. One was Spivakov. And if you look at his right hand, it was absolutely extreme when his hand was like this on the bow, and he had developed incredible movement of the fingers, and that movement was consist of vertical, also horizontal, and circular in different directions. And he developed a phenomenal movement. I was under his spell, and what was the breaking point for me is that I understand at one moment in my development, I understand that this would be great technique, but for this specific person. For everybody else, it was almost impossible to replicate. Many of his students were trying to replicate him and were unable to do so. And moreover, for me, the problem was not here, but here. I could not move past middle of the bow by holding the fingers like so on the bow. It was just absolutely impossible for me to move lower than middle of the bow. Nothing was working for me. And God forbid, I played concert and somewhere here, my bow would start shaking, and I could not stop shaking unless I would adjust. Then one day, I had a revelation. I was thinking that maybe if I marry those two ideas, the idea of this closer here and this closer when I'm at the tip of the bow, that would work well. So, gesagt, gemacht. That's what I did at the next concert that I played. I specifically tried to relax the hand at the upper part of the bow. Let me yeah. So I tried to relax the hand in this part of the bow up to the point where it was extreme Heifetz like bow hold, and progress here to the point of extreme, once again extreme, and it did work. It did work for me, and then it was another revelation for me. So I was thinking, how come Heifetz can do this and it really works, and other people do somewhere different and it works for them? So the revelation was those those violinists, those phenomenal violinists, used their specific anatomy to their advantage. And what they did, they somehow reworked the technique and used their hands to make it work. They didn't take the methodological approach as gospel. They look at themselves and they work around it. Okay? So that was my revelation, and that's what I believe now, that there is no one correct bow hold. Something that works for me will not work for you. Something that works for you will not work for somebody else. And the most important thing is your aesthetic beliefs and your ear. And that's it. So if you work long enough on bow changes and this is enough for you, then it's good. If this is not enough for you, then try a little bit more. If this is not working for you, try to adjust. If this is not working, try to adjust more. But the bottom line is that you have to figure out what works for you. So let's move to the next topic. When we're changing bow in the different directions, it's relatively straightforward process. You're riding your bicycle, you're on a straight line, everything is fine. Now you need to turn. There is a wall. You don't want to hit the wall. You want to turn and go back. Very easy. You slow down, and it's very common. Common sense. You slow down. You try to make a turn. That's where the number 8 in the Russian idea of the bow changes. You slow down, you turn, you go back, you come to the other wall, you make a circle, so you slow down once again and go the other direction. So the movement of the 8 is constant when you move. So the speed of the bow is divided in two parts. One part of the bow, the middle between my hands, relatively fast, or whatever the speed you desire. When you come here and there, the speed is extremely slow. Obviously, the speed is slow that works to your advantage because you need to achieve something. But the speed at the time of the bow change is slow for the reason to avoid jerking here and jerking there. So it's very simple. It's easier said than done, but it's simple to understand. The second thing to keep in mind that no, we don't always change the bow here and there. Sometimes we change the bow here, and sometimes we change the bow here, and sometimes we change the bow there. And that needs to be practiced. Very simply. You need to be practiced bow changes in the different parts of the bow. It's easy to understand which fingers are working here better, which fingers are working more here, which fingers are working more there, and which fingers working the best there. Next time you have a friend, a helper, you would ask that friend to keep the bow straight, and you will slide your hand on the stick, and you will see how you can change the bow, the hand direction with the stationary bow. And for that, you need a friend who will be holding your bow, and you will be sliding your bow, you will be sliding your hand here, and you will understand that doesn't work for me, but maybe it will work for you. Maybe your hands are a little bit. So you will better understand the speed and the direction of the finger and tilt of the finger. So not only what it works for you, but also what you will be accustomed for. All right. The other topic that we need to talk about is the topic of changing the strings. Also very important topic because string changes is combined with the bow change is the topic of discussion of the elbow and wrist. So sometimes, with the very beginners, I always explain to beginners that we change the string with the elbow position. So if you're imagining that the elbow is laying on a plane, flat surface, then this is how you change strings. And I explain to the beginner that this is your D string elbow and this is the A string elbow. And I ask them not to move anything here. I ask them to do this. And this is the first step. In about a couple of years, where they can master that, and you will be very surprised how few of the kids can master movement, understanding the movement of the elbow and whole hand and position of the elbow in the different strings, and especially the importance of moving the arm, straight movement of the arm on one string. Without this movement, straight movement of the arm. It's really important in the beginning. It starts with the twinkle twinkle variation, movement of the elbow here. So it's actually, there's a lot of obstacles even there. So not to do this, because the normal move of the beginner, because of the gravity, is this. This is the normal move of the beginner, and you will be very surprised. Some of your colleagues do the same thing. So this move, it's the base for a good détaché. That's why you can never master great détaché stroke. It's daily exercise in moving. But the truth of the matter is not that we're moving from one string to another only. We include the elbow as well. Otherwise, if we play, we will be doing this instead of this. So when we move the rapidly moving the bow from, let's say, D string to A string, we're not moving the elbow. We're placing the elbow in the middle position and use the wrist for the smaller movement. Okay? We need to keep that in mind. So moving in this direction is one bow stroke. Moving the other, moving the bow in between, connecting two strings. Sometimes is this, sometimes it's the elbow, and sometimes is the connection, combination of those two. So I mentioned to you there were three people who were a great influence on me when I was in Moscow. One is the Spivakov, I mentioned his name. The other one was a great old teacher by the name Belinky. When I met him, he looked ancient, but actually he was not that old. That was a very old guard, professor of old school, and he was at that time, when I met him, he would come to conservatory early in the morning with a thermos of some kind of oatmeal and buckwheat meal and full thermos of tea. That was early morning, late night. And the only thing that he was doing, he was teaching from morning to night, every day. He was, I think, 65 by that time, but he looked like 200 years old for me. He had his phenomenal violin. I didn't know what was that. Later, after he died, I found out that he had Pietro Guarneri. And he never played, but he was illustrating his points. And somehow, that was very interesting, he would illustrate a bar or two, and it will always be better than his best students, even those who would win big competitions. And I was amazed, how come? Anyway, his illustration was very fluent. He never played with the shoulder rest. And somehow his violin was sitting so comfortably like this, and I could never understand what he does. His bow hold was amazing. It was absolutely effortless, and he was in extreme. He was that, now that I understand, he was in that extreme Russian, old Russian position. The flexibility of the fingers were amazing. I couldn't see anything. It looked very stiff, but all the strokes were very precise. Great, effortless movement, and I was kind of surprised because he would do things that that I struggle with such an ease. That was so. The third person was Gregory Zhislin, and Gregory Zhislin and Belinky would demand from his student two things: Kreutzer number 11 in the Massar rendering, which is, I found that edition, and I have that in the edition in front of me, with 39 exercises of that etude. So it's Kreutzer number 11. And it's, if you look at that, it's famous. So they all demand the same thing. I don't know, Ghislain studied with Yankelevich. Uh, Yankelevich was a little older. He was an assistant to Yampolsky. Bellingcat was an age of Yampolsky. If I can find a picture of Bellingcat, I'll send you that picture. You would understand. He was very dry, incredibly dry person. And he looked very dry. So he talked very calmly, very quietly, and whenever he would say something that would go straight in your mind, and he would have that kind of time bomb psychological effect. He would say something and it goes like forever. So they would demand, number 11, in the Massar version. Massar is the famous French contemporary kreutzer. So the idea is like this. You play incredibly slowly, understand in the beginning, using entire bow. So first of all, you do the original kreutzer boings. Original kreutzer boing is this. You're connecting in the middle of the bow, using half bow, understanding what you do to connect string and connect bow in different directions. So exactly middle of the bow, middle of the bow. So that's the first. Then the other direction. Then three different directions. Frog. That was too fast. That was not good. Not good. To the frog. So not good. Nothing of it was good. That would be definitely not to their satisfaction. Then middle, then tip. As you progress in the different parts of the bow, you would realize how different parts of the hand and fingers and wrist working. So starting down, the same thing starting up. I can swear, after you play first page, and you had to play in that slow tempo, you had to play the entire etude, which is in this rendering 4 pages. It would take you approximately 15 or 20 minutes to play. After you do that for a week, you feel that now you know the answer to the life persistent question, what's the meaning of life? The meaning of life is to connect perfectly, that was not good, perfectly using exactly the same bow with the, so in about a week, you know everything. Now, when you go back to Massar version, then you have 39 or something like that. I think it's 39. Yeah, 39 plus, so 39 plus, you do the original, 3 different parts of the bow, starting down, 3 different parts of the bow, starting up. So that's another 6, 39, that's 45. Then Ghislain loved to do this. He would come to you, grab your hand, wrist here, okay, like so, and ask you to do the same, the same thing only with fingers. Okay, so obviously the sound that I'm producing is kind of different, but you understand. And the same thing but for that you need a helper who then you still can cheat a little bit with this. Okay, the next thing he would hold you here, so eliminating even a little bit of the wrist, and then you would be forced to do this. So you would put the bow in the middle, and this is already extreme. Okay. Once again, you do that for 5 minutes. Once again, you know the meaning of life. To connect really well, and once you do that, then suddenly you start understanding things that this is really when you have so much muscles, when you have so much attention to this. The most important thing is basically to forget about everything what you've done and go back to the musical point. Start playing music, because it's easy to understand, easy to forget the mechanics of running after you ran a couple of marathons. So this is basically the idea. Number 11, look at Kreutzer number 11. If you need those, if you need it, you'll find. If you need this Russian version with Massar 39, you don't even need 39. It's, you look at that, and it's just, you do it once or twice, or, if you have nothing better to do. A lot of those things are spicata, do, or this. So I wouldn't start with this. I wouldn't even start with this. I would start with the original Kreutzer, because he knew a thing or two about being a good violinist. So I would start with this, middle of the bow connecting. And after, I don't know, after a little time, you would feel that you master maybe not everything, but an important point. Okay, hope it helps. This is obviously not all what I would like to tell you, but I think it's more than you need to know. Happy music discovery.